What's up, guys? Welcome back to Storytime with Uncle Jon, COVID edition. Just kidding. It's got some kind of a cold, flu, bug thingy. It's got me congested all up in my head, and I've had a cough and congestion and dripping and snot everywhere. It's been a one hell of a ride. So anyway, finally back to feeling like I want to record, so we're going to give it a shot, see how it goes. You'll have to bear with the congested sound. At least I'm not hacking in your ear. Anyway, let's start off with some tales from tech support. I made a thing that got used to lay me off. Probably a very common story around these parts. In my old company, data was processed by a team of 8. Each type of data had a different process and a different length of time to complete. Each member of the team also did each of these tasks at different speeds due to their age or level of awakeness. Awakeness? Okay. Big Boss insisted on daily reports from the team leader about how many tasks were completed each day, etc. And my team leader spent an hour and a half every single morning pulling data and compiling the report instead of doing any team leading. I foolishly pipe up and commit the cardinal sin of volunteering my help. After a bit of explanation, I put together a group-accessible Excel document where each team member could input the tasks completed each day on one page, and the boss could hit the magical button that caused the macros to do their thing. An hour and a half every day became 5 minutes. Team leader was very happy. Now the layoff part. In order to do the workings out, I had to use an average length of time for each type of task, which very literally meant getting 8 people to spend a day measuring how long it took them to do each thing. I very specifically stated to team leader that because the output was based on averages, it could only be used as an indicator of progress, not as a formal report in any stretch. The fastest person was way faster than the others by some quirk of genetics, so it badly skewed what a normal amount of work should look like. Then came the layoffs. Guess whose tool was used to show whom of the 8 was working the slowest? Because I spent half my time making useful time-saving tools instead of proper work. That's what happens with upper and middle management. They just look at straight numbers. There's no context. They just don't know how to extrapolate information from one thing to another. And when all you can see is raw numbers, well, of course, this guy looks slow as crap because he's doing something else to make everybody else and everything else more productive and streamlined. Well, no good deed goes unpunished. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. I find it ridiculous you don't carry spare laptop power supplies everywhere. I get a call direct on my work cell phone well before my regular start time. Although it's before my start time, I usually answer the call anyway, in case it's because of a site outage, major incident, or something like that. Caller says, "Hi, Spetty23, low-level manager here. Other high-level employee gave me your number. I'm at a small remote site, and I forgot my laptop power supply at home, and the battery on my laptop is completely flat. Can you let me know if we have any spare power supplies here?" I said, "No, I don't think we do. They all use desktops there." Caller says, "Okay, what can I do? I'd have to drive all the way home to get my power supply." I said, "Well, perhaps there's a spare computer that you can use there? Or maybe you can ask around in case someone does have a laptop with a power supply you can borrow?" Caller says, "No, I've already asked around and no one has one. Everything I need is on my laptop. I really need this working." I say, "Well, you might have to drive back home to get your power supply then." Caller says, "I find it ridiculous that you don't have spares. Can you call my manager and let them know that I'll be offline for a few hours whilst and they make this next part sound very exacerbated, "go home and get my power supply so I can work." I say, "No, but seeing as you're on the phone to me now, I'm sure you can call them as you do have access to a phone." More incompetent management. So, way to go. This is it's got to be in like the management, lower middle management training book that first thing you have to learn is how to pass the buck, blame somebody else. Always got to make it somebody else's fault. Like, you can never take responsibility for anything. This is the adult version of the dog ate my homework, I guess. If you don't save your files, they won't be saved. Okay. A few days ago, a user came to the help desk with the issue that their most recent changes to some Word documents had been lost after they rebooted their Mac. I started digging and found that there was no version history, which was unusual. My organization is mostly a Microsoft shop, and by default, their organization licensed copy of Office should create new files in OneDrive. I took a look at the save settings in Word and found everything unchecked. It looks something like this to give you an idea of what I mean. I hoped maybe they'd managed to save their files to their personal iCloud account since they were using a Mac. No dice. They had an iCloud subscription, but they disabled syncing to iCloud. And as I was expecting by this point, they did not have OneDrive desktop client installed. It wasn't just that they had never signed in, it wasn't installed, which means it must have been manually uninstalled, since it's part of the Office suite. So it seemed like a reasonable case of them following the bad practice of only saving work locally on their machine. That stymied any recovery efforts, but why had the work been lost in the first place? I asked the user to show me how they normally go about saving documents. They brought up a Word document that they were currently editing. It was a new file and had never been saved. They had written about 12 pages of text, and it basically only existed in RAM 2. Apparently they'd had this document open since the aforementioned reboot, which was several days prior. I thought I was used to this sort of thing by now, but I found myself needing a few seconds to process and mentally press Control-S, Command-S a few times in prayer. I explained as diplomatically as I could that because they weren't using any of the autosave or cloud options, they needed to manually save their work. Thankfully, they were amenable to using OneDrive and I got it set up for them, so even if they learned nothing, they might be okay for a while. Edit. I almost forgot the weirdest detail. It turned out their actual saving process was to copy and paste the entire document and airdrop from their Mac to their phone to send in an email. I'm still not sure how anything was saved on their laptop to begin with. 1. During the course of troubleshooting, I learned that the iCloud's auto-saving features only apply to Pages, not Word, but moot point since they'd turned it off in settings anyway. Number 2, I know that's not quite how it works due to the local autosave and file blocks and whatnot, but for practical intents and purposes. No doubt they would ignore an unsaved work prompt when closing Word too. I don't have a ton of autosave features turned on. I mean, it still saves locally to my machine. What I really need to do is set up some sort of a backup for my files, instead of being lazy and, well, the lazy part would be doing it right and actually having it auto-saved to 2 places, but anyway, don't ever close out without making sure something's saved somewhere, so, oh well. Sorry, NyQuil brain. I will never learn that nothing is so permanent as a temporary solution, but my boss has. 1. About 15 years ago, I got a stack of green bar paper delivered to my desk every morning. It typically ranged from about 60 pages to 600 pages. I'd have to review each page and look for certain information, which may or may not have been present, and then add it to a list. Then I'd bucket the list by client, type it all up nice and neat, and then send the results over to each client. It took anywhere from an hour to half the day. I finally managed to convince our management to send me an electronic copy securely via email that I could parse and almost completely format via Excel. The result? I could typically bang out in about 15 to 30 minutes at most. The method was relatively crude, but it got the job done, and it was easy for me to modify in the format of the underlying data changes. I expected someone to come up with something more robust and official sometime in the next 18 months or so, but that little sheet was what we used for years. Even some years after I left the team and had forgotten all about it. Someone on the team found my name in that sheet and called me asking for help. Number 2, about 5 years ago I got asked to make a report that would identify... Hello? Time to get up and stretch and lay back down. Alright. About 5 years ago, I got asked to make a report that would identify gaps in our on-call schedule. Same as before, I built a quick and dirty mechanism using some reports and Excel that would pick out the gaps. And same as before, it was crude, but easy to understand and easy to modify as needed. And again, I figured someone would come along after the fact and build something more robust and official. But that didn't happen. I used that process for years, right up until I left. In fact, I just chatted via LinkedIn with the person who took over part of my duties. They're still using that thing. Number 3, I moved to a new company. At my new company, we had a need to reconcile some expense accounts against some operational activities. Effectively, we needed a way to verify if we were spending as much as we should have for certain things. We had purchased a solution that was supposed to answer that question, but given some idiosyncrasies in our industry and some peculiarities in our company, wow, these hard words, it was accurate maybe half the time, so effectively it was worthless. And again, I whip something up, and again it's crude, but again it gets the job done. Unfortunately, this time my solution requires a fair amount of manual work, but the result is accurate. It takes me about 30 minutes a day, provided the schema of the incoming data doesn't change. This time around, I was explicit that this process was a proof of concept. It was far too manual to be considered a permanent solution. We have an entire reporting and analytics department that should be able to whip up something far more robust, right? In the meantime, I'd use what I created to demonstrate what was possible. But once again, it's now almost 2 years after since I first presented this thing. And we're not only still using it, it's been formally deemed as meeting the need and a good use of resources, etc. In fact, the reporting and analytics department just declared that implementing a more automated solution is not a good use of development hours. So I guess I'm going to be making this for the foreseeable future. My manager asked me in my last review if I had created documentation for the process, so we can train someone else to take over when I take 2 weeks of personal time off this summer. Number 4. One of the inputs for the process I described above uses a vendor that we have concluded is wildly overpriced. And once again, I made a proof of concept replacement that leverages common tools in our company and expertise that we already have. We'd save about $150,000 a year in exchange for someone spending about 2 hours a week on this thing. I was able to mimic the process of our vendor almost precisely, so the result would look quite similar. I could even pretty up the reports if folks have interest. This time my manager announces its existence and that it's available for use. The department that works with the relevant vendor can use this thing instead. I'd say the chances of adoption are about 50-50. My bosses were excited to potentially save that much money, but enthusiasm waned once they realized my team wouldn't be doing the actual work. 5. Finally, my boss approached me last month and gave me strict marching orders to run any of these little projects past her first before announcing them to the world. She's fine with me making these things, but she wants to make sure my team doesn't get stuck with managing them. She says that we want to be the create solutions team, not the do the work other people ignore team. Hope everyone who has a blow off your fingers day has a good time blowing off their fingers. Just got finished mowing the lawn and cutting the hedges. Now it's time to vacuum and mop. Can you tell I'm having to dig back a little bit to find some of these stories? And in case you didn't get the reference to the blow off your fingers day, it's Independence Day, 4th of July here in the US. So anyway, again, no deed goes unpunished. It's amazing how many other departments will expect other departments to pick up the slack and basically do the job that they're supposed to be doing. I was wondering why it's so hot in here. The company I work for has 2 sites with in-house data centers. One site houses the data center in the back of the IT office with a big glass wall with the server racks visible. Lets a bit of noise through, but when rebooting something you can hear that the fans start spinning 100%. I was working from the other site, saw a temperature sensor going up in our monitoring tool. Sometimes it just spikes a bit, nothing to worry about, so I decided to ignore it for a bit. Checked the sensor again, it went from 26 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius. That can't be good. I asked in our IT Teams channel who was present at the site, got a response. Called the colleague immediately. I heard the servers whining in the background. I asked him to check the air conditioning units. Indeed, 45 degrees Celsius. Got a response back. I was wondering why it was so hot in the office. Clearly, they didn't notice the servers whining. Called my IT manager to ask who was the facilities employee on that specific site. I called that person and got the response, "Yeah, don't worry. There's air conditioning maintenance on the roof, but they're all on lunch break right now. They left the roof units off while they're on lunch." Air conditioner servicing should either be done after hours when you can shut the servers down, or there should be some other temporary or backup air conditioning for a server room, like maybe a redundant AC system, so if one goes offline, the other one automatically trips on, or somebody can manually, if you hear the alarm, turn it on. But I mean, you can't let a server room just sit there and cook itself to death. I mean, that's just not going to work. Not for long, anyway. What are we even paying you for? This was probably the most unhinged user I've ever had the joy of supporting. And this was the first time that I've ever raised my voice at a customer. This exchange was about 3 years ago now, so some of the timeline and verbiage isn't exact. Setup. I was the 24-hour on-call support technician for T2 software support that week. Our company has a 24-hour T1 software support team that directly receives calls from customers and escalates to T2 when it surpasses their knowledge. We also have a good rapport with the T1 guys. So we'll sometimes take calls that need a more authoritative hand, such as when a customer is very upset or resistant to advice. We also have a mirroring structure for hardware, with a 24-hour T1 call center with an escalation to technician dispatches. Field techs will usually try to do a phone consult before they're dispatched. Also, there are no managers available after hours unless there's an absolute extreme emergency for which there's no precedent of action. During the day, this would have been a let me get our manager situation, but in this case it was on me to just get them back up however I could. The on-call phone rings for me around 11 p.m. T1 guy says, "Hey, got a really heated customer here." Brief description of the issue. She called me a few hours ago, but she was very adamant that she didn't want to troubleshoot with me at the time. I asked her to call me back when she was ready, and she just did. But now she's really hot and demanding to be escalated because her site's been down for so long. She's claiming that we didn't help her enough, though I'm not sure how we could have. "I'm sorry, but do you mind helping me out here?" I say, shit. Yeah, that's fine. I gather more information about the issue. When did she first call in? T1 says, first call was 6 p.m., so they've been down for about 5 hours. I said, crap. Okay, I'll handle it. Thanks. I give her a call and she snatches the phone up before the first ring is over. I say, yes, hello, this is Vi with customer, word vomiting while I periodically try to interject. Why have you taken so long to fix this? We've been down for 5 hours and my manager's breathing down my neck. But you guys have done nothing but waste my time and not respond, and we're paying you for 24-hour service, and yet you guys don't do shit after hours. Why are we even paying you? I say, ma'am, I do apologize, but we were told you're not able to troubleshoot with us when you initially called. We were ready to assist, but didn't hear. Customer interrupts again and says, BS, I called you 3 times after. You guys did absolutely nothing but tell me it's probably a software issue. Me, being confused, yes ma'am? It does indeed appear to be a software issue. That's why we wanted to attempt to address this with troubleshooting. Regardless, I'm here to assist you now and would like to... Customer, your tech guys don't know anything. I don't know why we pay for this kind of service when you guys don't know squat. And it's about time I'm finally talking to someone who's going to do something. Me, knowing T1 knew exactly what to do and was very knowledgeable. My apologies, ma'am. Let's try troubleshooting now. I attempt to assist her with troubleshooting, and we end up getting stuck in cyclical issues of me asking her to attempt a reset procedure and her getting lost about halfway through. The entire time we're working, she continuously repeats sentiments like those above about how angry and frustrated she is with our procedures and support. She ends up dropping a line about how the field tech wouldn't even attempt to help her, and I pause. I say, ma'am, did you say field tech? When did you talk to a field tech? Customer says, yes, I called the hotline back and they insisted it sounded like a software issue and couldn't help me, so they hung up on me. I called them back twice and they kept saying they couldn't help, but finally escalated me, and then the stupid field tech said the same thing. 2 hours wasted. Me having a light bulb moment. Man, did you call the hardware hotline? Customer says, well, yes, I called the other hotline because the first hotline wouldn't help me and never called me back. I waited for hours and they never called. I say, ma'am, they asked you to call back when you were ready. Customer says, well, they should have called me back, so I called the other one and they wasted my time by asking me to do stuff on the machine that didn't even fix it. Her manager apparently comes down at this point to check on her, so she puts me on speakerphone. We're clicks away from resolving the issue, so I try to drop the issue of who called who, but apparently for her, she now has to double down on trying to throw us under the bus. As I began talking, she starts ranting over me. At first I let it go, but it started to seem intentional. There would be a pause, so I would start providing instructions. As soon as I started speaking, she would cut in over me talking about how incompetent we all are. For the first time at this job, I started to raise my voice. The customer's complaints were essentially a non-stop stream of consciousness rant, Bleh, that I tried to talk through with the manager occasionally interjecting. The below exchange occurred with all parties overlapping. I say, ma'am, would you please try to do this troubleshooting step I'm asking? All I need is for you to click. Customer finally addressing me. Now look here, I'm done with this nonsense and I still can't believe you've allowed us to be down for so long. I say, I just need you to click this final option and we'll be done. Customer says, no. See, this is ridiculous because we're paying you guys to support us in your stupid tech. Manager chimes in, says, click this, correct? I say, yes, please, click that. And ma'am, the previous technician was very competent, but you didn't call. Customer says, we've been down because your support can't figure out how to. Manager says, okay, Then I say, we've been supporting you this entire time, but we can't support you when you don't. Another cutoff. Why are we even paying you 24-hour support if you don't support us after hours? I say, ma'am, it's almost 1 a.m. in the morning. We are literally supporting you after hours, right this very second. Customer says, you know what I mean. I say, really? I really do not. Now, is your system working or... Customer says, I can't believe that. I say, is the system online? Customer says, how dare you interrupt? Now the manager interrupts her with a faint hint of levity. Thank you very much, company tech support. We're good to go now. You've been great. Have a good evening. And they hang up. I later confirmed with Hardware T1 that she had indeed called them, yelling about why her software was still down. They did everything they could to get her to call Software T1, but finally relented to let the tech take over and confirm she was using the wrong channels. So I'm guessing in her pea-sized brain that she figured 24-hour support meant they were just going to come out and automatically fix it, or do it somehow magically through the airwaves. Just magically jump into your system, troubleshoot it, and fix it without any input from you, no troubleshooting help from you. That's not how any of this works. Well, guys, I appreciate you bearing with me while I was sick for a few days, and we're going to try to get back on a regular schedule again now. And do me a favor, if you like handmade stuff, go to this little website right here and check it out. And until the next video, we'll see you.